In 2008, the Jonas Brothers sang, "I can't get your smile out of my mind. I think about your eyes all the time. Hopeless, head over heels in the moment." In that same year, Leona Lewis proclaimed, "I don't care what they say, I'm in love with you. They try to pull me away, but they don't know the truth. You keep me open, and I keep love." When was the last time you heard a song like this? About 5 minutes ago. Olivia Dean makes lovey-dovey songs, and Ray has to know, where is her husband? Believe it or not, people today are very much obsessed with love. People watch Love Island, Love is Blind. There might not be a lot of love there, but it's all about the possibility. But you can't build a romantic ecosystem from songs and reality TV alone. When was the last time you saw a romantic movie that became a genuine cultural event? A random Netflix release doesn't count. I mean a movie that everyone watched, talked about, and quoted. The romantic equivalent of Barbie, Oppenheimer, Backrooms. And don't you dare bring up Wuthering Heights, the massively successful movie that is bright, happy, optimistic. Like with all the warmth of Sleepless in Seattle, the unabashed wish fulfillment of Notting Hill, the shameless whimsy of The Holiday, where the biggest conflict is time zones. When two people meet, fall in love, and are happy at the end. It worked back then, and it works now. People are still watching the same handful of classics. So where did the happily ever afters go? They got pushed out, not just for box office reasons, but for their problematic messaging, cringe factor, and lack of self-awareness. But what did they need to be self-aware about? We're going to look into how the rom-com backlash turned out to be something we perhaps needed all along. So now, let's get started. Romantic comedies have always existed in Hollywood. The genre's biggest tropes, meet cutes, enemies to lovers, were perfected. But 1990s Pretty Woman kind of revolutionized this genre. Adapted as a modern-day Cinderella story, the romanticism went into full speed. Grand gestures, glamour, wish fulfillment, happiness. Its fish-out-of-water comedy made it funny, and its fairy tale optimism made it irresistible. Just behind monster hits like Ghost and Home Alone, Pretty Woman was the third highest-grossing movie of 1990. And naturally, Hollywood knew they found a golden theater ticket. Romantic comedies were the official date movies throughout the 90s and 2000s. The stories varied, but they often shared the same DNA. They were cozy, optimistic, and romantic in the purest way. The characters didn't need something from each other. They felt a connection. They were also one of the few major genres consistently told from a woman's perspective, often re-adaptations of Jane Austen novels. The protagonist might be a busy working woman who may be jaded with love. She may have her own quirky support system, but still feels overlooked. These films are typically set in large cities that can feel isolating, and it's even more miraculous when you find love. Or maybe characters are pretending to be someone they're not, and accidentally fall in love. Or there's some big, elaborate scheme they have to keep up. Maybe they're emotionally lying to their partner. There's a lot of lying. But you can forgive them because romantic comedies hinge on the charisma and likability of their bankable stars. If your movie starred Tom Hanks, Meg Ryan, Julia Roberts, or Sandra Bullock, audiences trusted they were in good hands. And they weren't just popular movies. They were cultural phenomena. Millions sighed with relief when the two leads of Sleepless in Seattle finally met. Everyone knew, you complete me. You had me at hello. And I hate the way I don't hate you. You've Got Mail introduced people to the concept of falling in love online. The elegant comfort of The Parent Trap, What Women Want, The Holiday solidified Nancy Meyers as the master of comfort cinema. People left these movies thinking, I want to experience something like that. They were visually pretty, crowd-pleasing fantasies.
I turn on the news and I'm like, and then I turn on Sweet Home Alabama and I'm like.
The romantic comedy formula started to slowly decline in the mid to late 2000s. Improv-heavy romcoms like Wedding Crashers and The 40-Year-Old Virgin began taking over. 500 Days of Summer and Ruby Sparks deconstructed the romantic comedy formula. Traditional romcoms could still make money, but their pop culture impact was mostly led by Razzie nominations. They weren't exciting must-sees anymore. They were increasingly seen as too sugary and outdated. A movie like Crazy Stupid Love could be described like, oh, it's a romantic comedy, but it's really good. The genre was even harder to find in the 2010s, as studios shifted their attention towards expensive franchises and cinematic universes, leading to the collapse of the mid-budget movie. the exact category where rom-coms thrived. Whatever rom-coms that were still being made were released straight to streaming, where they might go viral for a couple weeks before disappearing into the algorithm. Any exceptions to the rule, like Crazy Rich Asians, turned out to be a moment instead of a movement. The 2010s also saw the dating landscape changing. Swipe-based dating apps were becoming widely accessible and specifically targeted younger generations. Meeting someone through friends, work, hobbies, or real-life meet-cutes were becoming less common. How can you recreate that classic movie magic with floating text bubbles? Even in its heyday, there was plenty of rom-com backlash, and the complaints went beyond "they're predictable, you always know how it ends." These are stories built entirely around emotions, and to some people, they seemed genuinely harmful. So why are romantic comedies so terrible? The women don't do anything. The men have to put all the work for romance. They do the big romantic gestures. They have to chase after the protagonist as she's going away, or escaping her feelings somewhere. And all the women have to do is sit back and wait for romance to happen to them, just hoping to be chosen. Meanwhile, women chasing men are portrayed as desperate. These movies also perpetrate the soulmate theory. There's one designated person that you must be with. They're the second half, and if you lose them, you'll never experience love like that again. Even if you do have another relationship, it will only pale in comparison. Then there's the argument that rom-coms package unhealthy relationship dynamics as romantic. If their plot requires it, the characters may make bold-faced lies they have to keep up. Or they sabotage their loved ones' careers. Tom Hanks ruined Meg Ryan's small business, and the Prime Minister of the UK transfers his intern because he loved her so much. And across the street from that, a man is obsessed with his best friend's wife, and she rewards him with a kiss. And that's just scratching the surface. There's stories about stalking for love. Waiting for Forever shows a man who searches for his childhood friend to start a relationship with her. And let's not forget all the plots about the reformed bad boy, or the haters to lovers stories. The unhealthy dynamics goes on and on. The decline of rom-coms were somewhat celebrated. And what was the big-name stories that replaced them? Movies about toxic relationships, heteropessimism, or even movies that feel cynical towards the process of dating. The tone of the materialists is so angry. Or there might even be troll marketing, like in the drama. You thought this will be a normal romance story, but it's not. So I think we threw the baby out with the bathwater. Of course, not all romantic comedies are good, or deserve to be defended. But the good ones offered something genuinely valuable. For one, not all rom-coms are just about romance. They're like coming-of-age films for adults, with love acting as the backdrop for personal growth. Bridget Jones learns from her mistakes and becomes a stronger, more confident person who doesn't tolerate being treated poorly. Jane in 27 Dresses finds that she doesn't need to be the supporting character in her own life, and she has her values and goals and stands up to them. And yes, what she did to her sister was harsh, but her fiancé was about to marry someone who lied to him from the very beginning. Wouldn't it be better to back out now than a year or two after marriage? And for many of these characters, love isn't only the goal, but marriage. Marriage imagery is all over romantic comedies. The story is centered on people finding love, and the goal is for two people to end up together. It's not anything world-changing, but we want to see them win in the end because love is a beautiful thing. No one is defined by whether they're in a relationship. A fulfilling life can take many different forms, but we're also social beings. Wanting a healthy, happy relationship is one of the most ordinary, deeply human desires there is. And desiring that doesn't make someone male-identified or whatever. I talked about this a year ago on my Patreon. About 5-10 years ago, there was a strong, I catch flights, not feelings culture. Caring wasn't cool, nor was being attached. It was so that you'll be impossible to hurt. And that kind of emotional distance doesn't exist in rom-com world. Rom-coms ask their characters to be vulnerable and honest. These types of films can, in a way, be a morale booster. Before anyone yells, relationship propaganda, I know movies aren't real life, but culture has a mood, and right now, that mood often feels like cynicism. Love is for the fools, and love can make people do crazy things. But romance isn't the problem. It has a lot to do with self-worth, knowing what you're willing to put up with, realizing when you're being mistreated, and having the courage to walk away. That's what Bridget Jones did. See? Beneath all the funny scenarios and witty Hollywood dialogue, rom-coms are stories about vulnerability. We see what these characters are insecure about, when they've been hurt before, and finding someone they can finally feel truly safe with. Movies like this used to be everywhere, and they can coexist with darker stories about toxic relationships. What the movie landscape needs is variety. Reese Witherspoon said, "I do think these 10 to 15 years, when the internet started, social media started, and then we stopped. We started going, romcoms are cringy, but it was actually where we learned social dynamics." From Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan. Maybe movies aren't where we need to learn everything, but it's just the most core things. People talking to each other, misunderstanding each other, learning about each other. There's no hiding behind texts, curated replies. The stories move forward because people have conversations. Yes, rom-coms have flaws, questionable tropes, emotional cheating for one, but it all builds up to the same payoff. The moment of catharsis when love can truly win in the end. Of course, real relationships aren't like the movies. Stable, healthy love is preferred over the grand, all-or-nothing romances on screen. But just as we don't expect action movies to teach us how to survive a car crash, we don't need to take every romantic gesture in a rom-com as relationship advice. Sometimes you just want to watch a beautiful movie with charming characters, a soundtrack that enhances the upbeat tone, and an ending that feels comforting. Maybe that's the fantasy we've always been chasing. And perhaps our modern romance stories wouldn't hurt having a pinch of fairy tale fantasy. But that's just my take on it. What do you think of rom-coms, and do they need to come back ASAP? Thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Bye!